Hello, Lady Artist Leslie here. I wanted to come on really quick just to do a quick video about the difference between empowering someone in a relationship and enabling them in a relationship. And most of you who know me know I talk a lot about enabling because we as women, for some reason, we do enable. We do not take our stand. We don't stand our ground to say that is not tolerated in my home, that is not tolerated in my space. We literally allow certain things to happen in the relationship that are negative, that are very unhealthy, and that are detrimental to our soul, okay? So I want to talk about real quick what an enabler is. An enabler is one who encourages unhealthy behavior. Encouraging actually delays the loved one's growth, okay? So if you're an enabler, you encourage unhealthy behavior in your spouse, which delays their growth because of you enabling them. No one ever sees themselves as an enabler. I used to be an enabler as well. I was actually married to someone who used drugs in the past, and I didn't want the person to continue to go to the drug house to use the product. Now this shows how naive I was as well. But I used to say to the person, you know what, I'd rather you be home. And we had a basement at that time, and I said, you can just go ahead and do it in the basement. You're talking about enabling at the highest level, that I would allow someone to use crack cocaine in my home with my children, knowing that it's unsafe for me, it's unsafe, it's unhealthy for him, and it's definitely not an environment that I would want my children in. But being an enabler, okay, and not knowing my worth and my value and understanding who I was in Christ, I was allowing the person to do exactly what they wanted to do at my expense, okay? An enabler is when you put your spouse needs before your own, or your feelings or the feelings of your partner at the expense of your own. And I have been guilty of that as well. Understand it is critically unhealthy for a relationship for you to enable. Generally, relationships that have an enabler there, the relationship will end in separating, because it's not healthy that the person is doing what they're doing. So instead of you empowering them to come up out of it and grow and change, you've enabled them to get worse and sink into what they're doing. Eventually, somebody got to make a decision to say, this is not going to happen anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. So as the spouse, as the wife, as the mate, what are you enabling? What have you enabled? And then you can look back and say, wow, that's why that relationship didn't work, or that's why this one is going down the path it's going in. What have I enabled? And this video is for you to really examine yourself and ask yourself, if I enable certain behavior in my last relationship, I'm going to make sure my next relationship, I'm not going to do that. Or if I'm in a marriage right now and I have enabled certain behaviors, you got to make a decision to say, today the buck stops here. I can't no longer enable your behavior, which means it doesn't mean that you're going to try to control them and make them stop. It just means that you find healthy ways of letting them know that they can no longer do those type of things around you or around the children, and that you would like it if they'd be respectful to you. Because after a while, when a person realizes they can't just do it at their own leisure, and they just can't, you know, after a while they start to be kind of uncomfortable. Because if you can just hang out on your sofa and do what you do, or hang out in your bedroom and do what you do, then there's no reason to change. But as soon as somebody come in and shake it up and say, no, that's not tolerated, now it kind of moves them and pushes them to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to stop. Because I realize this is hurting my family. This is not something I should be doing, or whatever the case may be. But enabling certainly causes the person to continue to go down the path that they're on, okay? Number two is when you feel unworthy. Are you feeling unworthy in some areas? When you feel unworthy and you feel like you're not worth it, you enable behavior that is unhealthy or negative for the relationship. You apologize too much. You're always the person apologizing, and you didn't even do anything wrong. You're apologizing because you've allowed the person to, you enable the person to continue to do something that they're not supposed to be doing. And you may come in and disrupt it, or make a decision to, you can't do this anymore, and all of a sudden now, well, I'm sorry. Okay, well, you can do it now. No. You have to stick to your guns. The relationship never seems to get better You put your hobbies, your goals, and everything on the back burner, always trying to enable and appease your partner. Give your spouse the opportunity to fix their issues when you no longer enable. Let me say that again. You give your spouse the opportunity to fix their issues when you no longer become an enabler. To some extent, it is because you see your spouse as helpless is why we become enablers. And you know, women, we're such nurturers. We care, we're loving, and we want to cover and make sure that they're going to be okay. So it's like, okay, you can do it. You can do it, but you're dying on the inside. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. So quickly, at the end of the day, not all helpful gestures are truly helpful. So while you think you're helping somebody, you're really delaying their growth, you're delaying their progress, you're allowing the relationship to go in two separate places that you never intended it to be, all because you enabled bad behavior. You got to make a decision and say the buck stops here. You can't control them. You can't make them stop doing what they're doing, but you know you can make sure that you don't enable the behavior and allow it to continue to go down the path that it's going. Okay, so I hope I made that very clear. I may come back on tomorrow and do a part B, but if you have any questions regarding enabling, please feel free to inbox me, email me, or you can comment below. But enabling a relationship will cause a relationship to go south. It will cause you to no longer agree. When you get a moment, read Amos chapter 3 verse 3, and it says, how can two walk together except they be agreed? Okay, so if you started off a relationship and it was going like this, where you guys are walking together, it's because you enabled behavior and you all were doing it together, or you allowed it. The minute you make a decision and say, I'm not going to allow that behavior anymore, or I'm putting my feet down about it, it's a possibility that you may go this way. But more times than not, when you do not enable, you begin to empower the relationship. And if you're with the person you're supposed to be with, you will empower them to grow and change and bloom and become all that God called them to be. But remember this, when you enable a relationship, when you enable your spouse to do something that is negative, bad, or unhealthy, you're damaging the relationship. So examine from this video, what have I enabled in my relationship that caused us to be where we are today? Make a decision to stop it. If you're single and you're going into a relationship, make sure you make a decision to say, I am not going to become an enabler by, first of all, not accepting behavior that you know you can't accept tomorrow. Don't accept behavior today that you know tomorrow you can't live with. Does that make sense? Don't accept the behavior today that you know you can't live with tomorrow. Okay, so I just want to say something really brief. I'm going to accept all of your comments, all of your however you feel about it. And if you just have questions about, are you enabling and how do you get out of it, the steps that are needed to take to come out of being an enabler, I'll make sure I upload and do another video on how to take those steps on coming out of a enabling relationship. Okay, so thank you for listening. I hope it blessed you, and I'll talk to you soon.